Above Ground Podcast, episode 193.
The Human Factor.
Disclaimer. The hosts of this podcast, Will Foley and TPP, are not medical professionals, and this is not medical advice. Both Will and TPP have firsthand experience with mental illness. They have their own perspective and own thoughts on mental health challenges. Above Ground Podcast was birthed to help those who struggle with their mental health through honest dialogue. These conversations aim to break down the walls while building stronger foundations for positive mental health. By speaking openly and sharing tools, they foster connection. By fostering connection, they convey hope. With connection and hope, we can continue to increase awareness. This is Above Ground Podcast.
Coming at you live with real conversations about mental health from the perspective. It's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now your hosts, TPP and Will Foley. Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to Above Ground Podcast.
Above Ground Podcast, because you can't serve below.
Oh, no, you can't. What up, TPP?
What's happening?
What's going on, my friend?
Back at it. Back at Hallam Halls.
The Hallam Halls. In the Hallam Halls. A little sabotage.
Back at recording.
Back at it.
New episode.
Back at shouting at all you fine folks out there.
Yeah, and if you just found us, thank you for tuning in and checking us out. And if you are repeat offenders, we appreciate your support.
That's right.
And welcome back.
Welcome back. That's right.
So today we are going to be discussing the human factor.
Timmy's got a serious face on.
I do?
Yeah. I do.
The human factor.
What is the human factor? Do tell.
Well, you know, maybe I'll start off with a quote that kind of pushed me to think about something similar. Kind of pushed me to think of an idea to do the episode, I guess. I believe it was Carl Jung, and he said, "Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but as you touch a human soul, be just another human soul." So I think that kind of sums up what I kind of wanted to pinpoint, I guess. You know, just you get people that are, you know, have degrees or have been studying this stuff or anything really for years, multiple years, and they lose the human factor part of it. You know, it's what's missing is, you know, everything looks good on paper, but when you put aside all your wisdom and all your degrees and all the knowledge you know or you think you know, and just talk to somebody as a human, just be with another human being and treat them as a human being.
Okay.
I just think it gets lost.
Yeah, I mean, it does get lost, but it doesn't get lost everywhere. And that's the thing. Like, you can't, like, yes, the human factor is super important, and I definitely think it is more valuable, and especially when it comes to a trauma-informed approach to things, you have to have the human factor first and foremost, because that's, you know, one of the bases of all of this
right.
Person-centered stuff. I don't fault anybody for their degrees or anything, because you do need knowledge.
I'm not faulting anybody.
And I understand that sometimes the humanness does get taken out of it, especially in this realm. The mental health realm is brutal. I mean, we wouldn't have constant conversations about stigma if there wasn't so much wrapped up in it. But again, I do think there are a lot of people out there who do have a human factor, and unfortunately, the human factor gets taken out of it for lots of reasons. And I don't think it's humanity. It's like I don't think it's the human. Well, some of it is the human themselves, but I think that because of how everything is laid out in this type of environment, as far as being able to bill and do all these things, we've been forced to take out the human part of it. Now, that doesn't excuse bad behavior.
Right. I don't know if I would agree with forced, but it depends on the person doing it.
But I do think you do get forced.
You lose it a little bit, but I mean, if you can come up with a better way, but I don't, no one's going to, there's no one that's going to force you to do, like, are they forcing you at gunpoint? Like, there's one out there to force you to do it.
Here's the thing. If your billing is based on what you can bill, so you're based on billing for 15 minutes, 15-minute increments, that's how it's billed. And if that's how your practice is run, you have to hit certain amount of numbers, and there's certain criteria that have to get met for those billing services to be done.
So billing is billing, and then when you're meeting with somebody, that's the human.
Right, and I get it. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, it becomes very mechanical, and again, it comes down to mindfulness, and it comes down to a lot of things. But I don't know if, like, I've had more experience now, better experience with other people who have a little bit more humanity left in them still, which is good. But I do agree, though, that there is a lot of, like, just bad behavior.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's everywhere. I think it's something that is missing a lot from even regular conversations, not even dealing with medical professionals or people with degrees or whatever. Just in the everyday, life of having a conversation with somebody.
Well, we've lost the ability to disagree and not take it personally. Many of us have.
Sure.
And granted, anybody's on any given day can be pushed one way or the other. Doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter which side you're on. Anybody can be pushed one way or another depending on what's transpired during the course of the day. And again, if you're not mindful of your emotions and can manage those things, and then you actually see the other person as a person, because again, isn't this all internal stuff? So if the human factor isn't there, it's not necessarily you, that it's just, I get where you're coming from, and I'm not arguing. I'm just wondering if the human factor, if we look at it from our other lens and not take it personally, is just kind of that thing. And we just have to kind of, it sucks.
I don't know what you mean. I'm talking more like if I'm an influencer, okay, and I'm like making money and got millions of followers, I'm more worried about what I'm wearing and what stupid fucking high top shoes I have on and how I look good to my fucking influencers and followers, are fucking just being stupid and not going, hey, you know what? There's people that are not at like my level right now that don't fly fucking jets from here to there. And, it's not, you can't just go up there and like, hey, well, you gotta do this, this, and this, and there you go. And if you're not doing it, you're not hustling and grinding enough. It's like, no, fuck you. There's other elements to this, That's
absolutely
basically what I'm saying. Like, you're taking again, some people push the whole grind thing, and you got to do this. It's like, well, how much sun do you get in your daytime? How much laughter do you get in your week? How much connection do you have in your life? Can we talk about any of that stuff or no? Do we just go, well, this is what you should do because it's the newest thing, and I don't really care if it works, I just know that it's new. So you're going to follow me because I have, followers. So I must know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of that. I mean, there's a lot of people pushing a lot of bad stuff and nonsense and themselves and consumerism and all the other stuff. And I spend a lot of time bitching about it too, to my kid who watches some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And, I'm not going to, deny that there's a lot of that. And there's a lot of that in this space too, even. Like,
that's mostly what I'm talking about. Is
like,
this space that we're anything mental health related. You have to kind of I don't know. You have to kind of like if you're playing in an important role, okay. If you have the microphone and you are, on a top tier and people listen to you, like you can't just. I think you have to be a lot more mindful. You can't just like get up there and like babble.
Well, you're right, and there's a lot of there's people out there who take none of that seriously, and I agree with you. You're right, and again, that does come down to a certain part wisdom and knowledge, and part being able to teach that, or whatever you want to call it.
And that's
whatever you want to call it.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. It's like having the wisdom and knowledge to say, yeah, I do know this stuff, and I'm going to put my 2 cents in, but when I'm done, I'm going to let Will talk, and maybe I'll disagree with him, but like, hey, if he has lived experience, then he's got something to fucking say, and we should listen. That's all I'm saying. Like, don't go if I'm a doctor or something, like, well, no, that's not the way that's not how it should be done. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, there's this unfortunately has been I don't know if it's a symptom or a cause or if it's whatever it is. This has been, historically the whole idea of psychiatry and those types of things, that there's always been this disconnect between the patient, and I hate to even use that word because that word makes me.
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be some of that, but I think at the same time, if there's a little bit of disconnect, that's why I always say, be your own advocate.
Yeah,
but for
I will
people
say not everybody can. Not everybody can be their own advocate, and in that, and in those cases, and unless you're hooked up to a particular program, being of a specific illness, they might be able to have an actual advocate.
Right.
But some people really do have a hard time advocating for themselves.
You're right. I know.
So but I do know what you're saying. But unfortunately, like, not everybody takes responsibility for what they do and what they say and how they act and stuff. But we'll get into that in the next episode. We'll talk a little bit more about that kind of stuff. But
I guess, maybe some of this to me is like, which I've said a million times, I feel like we've lost our way a bit and to like the simple things. Again, like simple like connections. How many connections, are you going out, and do you have a group of friends that you can go out and like do something fun with? Are you finding a hobby that you like, that you enjoy? You know what I mean? Like, we overlook a lot of shit, and I think it's because, I have a degree or I know better than you do. And if you have...
we just overlook a lot of shit in general. Doesn't matter if you got a degree or not. We just overlook a lot of shit.
For this specific conversation, though. That's why I said that, because it pertains to what we're talking about. I think in the mental health field, it tends to happen. And I'm not picking on people, I'm not saying all of them are like that. I'm just saying that, because, again, if you have, 2 million followers, just because you have 2 million followers doesn't mean you necessarily know what you're talking about.
True. And just like having a degree doesn't necessarily make you
True.
know what you're talking about either, which I totally understand. But I wish we had 2 million followers. Maybe I don't, though, man. That's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of fucking people.
Yeah.
That is a lot of fucking people.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess. I think it'd be cool.
I'm not saying it wouldn't. I'm just saying, it is what it is. And again, we've lost our ability to connect, and on so many levels.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I think we've been programmed for this for a very long time, and I think, and it's because everything is connected, no matter how everybody wants to separate everything, but it's all really connected. And the fact is that you can just watch it, and you can steadily have seen this for the last 60, 70 years. And then we just become desensitized to everything. And I mean everything. And then just like we've been force fed a steady diet of me. And unfortunately, we learn way too late in life that it's not about me. And it's, so many of us. And those of us who've kind of come to this fucking, rationalization finally, want to help, and say, hey, if I can do it, you can do it. But again, when we've been literally divided by so many different things, and then the dawn of social media, where we all need it now because that's the only way to stay truly connected to everybody. Yeah. Yet we're not connected to anything in reality, and nothing has any value anymore, really. And connection doesn't have much value because we find more connection in the screen. Because again, that's how we were raised.
Right.
Like, we were raised watching Saturday cartoons. We got programmed into that early age of sugary cereals and treats and stuff. And it's like, so that there's that, and then there's the way society has sort of morphed itself into hyperspeed, and then just trying to, there's so many reasons why we can't connect anymore. Not to mention that nobody trusts anybody anymore. And why doesn't anybody trust anybody anymore? Well, because we believe what's on social media, and because social media engineers have spent years of data collecting, saying, haha, if we send this guy this picture and he looks like this, but we send this guy this picture and he looks like that, they're going to get into an argument, because that's what it's all about. So, and granted, so many of us have traveled that road, and so many of us no longer travel that road anymore because it's not worth it. But
there's a lot. I think there's a lot of distractions.
There's a lot of distractions, but I don't necessarily. It's the thing about it is a distraction is something that takes away your attention, and it's I think of a distraction as sort of benign. This is not a distraction. This is because it's not benign, because it's engineered. So it's a little bit more like, and again, this is what happens as we develop as a nation, and then we develop computers and we start computing information faster. People start, and again, not everybody gives a fuck about everybody else. And at the end of the day, that's really what it is. Do you give a fuck about somebody else, or is it all about you? And if it's really all about you all the time, and then it's all about making yourself happy and fuck the team and your tribe. It's only your tribe. It doesn't matter about everybody. It's your tribe. Like, you have to find that niche so far down that we can't connect anymore, because if you don't fall in that niche, then a lot of people won't even associate with others because they're not part of that niche. And then, we're all villains to each other. Like,
yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, and again, that's culture. That's.
Whoa, wait a minute! You can't say that, because I used to say that, and you say I was wrong.
I'm not saying no. I'm not saying that you're your things about culture are wrong. I'm not saying that. You're not wrong. I'm just saying you can't blame culture for everything. And I'm not blaming culture for everything.
No, I'm not
culture
either.
Culture is a part of it.
It is.
It is a huge part of it. But unfortunately, it's not. It's the culture itself is not is the culture of this nation. It's not all, and then this nation and a group of other nations that all believe the same thing.
Yeah, well, culture's culture.
Yeah, but we've led the culture. In reality, we really have. Like, most people don't fight to get into other countries like they do to get into ours, regardless of however you feel about that. But people don't still come here just because they think it's easy, because it's not. So, like, there's still something that we lead. So we've led culture, and we also led, like, as a nation, the hyperspeed of everything. You know, and I'm not saying that we're the only ones that did, because obviously we're not, because the superpower, I mean, you know, there's other smart nations out there. But I'm just saying, like, I mean,
I'm talking more on, like, a lower level as far as culture goes. Like, you know, your day-to-day activities type stuff, not necessarily like...
Let me ask you this about that as far as connection goes. Did you have real connections as a kid? Do you think it was, and obviously it's probably kind of obvious that it's easier to make connections as a kid sometimes for some, okay? But is it because as we're grown up, we get further and further away from that inner child and just all those things that we did as kids? Do you think that is what really leads to that disconnected connection, and then we get sucked up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like
into the adult world and adulting.
Life's experiences, you know, will kind of shape either where you are now or where you're going, and that's kind of how it works, you know. Like, I do think I had a lot of good connections as a kid, and I think that's where, like you were saying, a lot of people don't trust people. Like, that's where some of that stuff stems from, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's part of it, though. It's like, it's fine to have that little voice, like, hey, maybe we should beware of trusting somebody, but at the same time be open to the idea of it. That's, to me, is more of the growth. Like, yeah, we had these experiences, but we're not, like, bound to them. You know, we're not bound to what we think in our minds. We have a little bit more control, and we can, you know, make a choice.
Well, nicely put.
I mean, I think that's why, like, again, that's why, like, when you were talking about being forced, it's like, I get it. If I have a job to do this, but, like, ultimately I have a hand in it. I have a say to, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just point the finger at this and go, like, well, it's because of this, and they forced it. Well, a human did it, so, you know, maybe this human up here is telling you to do it, and he's trying to force you, but you still can be like, well, I'll try and alter it a little bit, or add a little bit, you know?
I'm going to say most people don't, though.
But that's their choice.
But you make that choice for a lot of reasons. And this is the reason why we can be led around by a shoestring, by people with some charisma and a big mouth.
True.
And that's
right,
the truth.
But
man.
That's what I'm saying, though. It's like, you know, I mean, look at, you can't save everybody, but, like, you
can't.
know, if you're gonna do that, be led around or follow this, just don't be one of those people that are, like, you know, saying, like, oh, you know, we need to change or something, because you're part of the problem. You're not doing anything.
Yeah, that's hard, because I gotta say, there's a lot of reasons for people doing a lot of things, and people have their reasons, and I do say most things are choices for sure.
Yeah, no,
you make a choice and you play a part in it.
But if you do play a part in it. If you talk to somebody about it and you say, hey, look, Will, you did X, Y, and Z. You made these mistakes, and like, hey, again, this is the human factor. Did you not understand the programming? Did you misread this, misunderstand this? What? Oh yeah, you know what I did. Okay, so now and then we gain a little bit more knowledge, and we talk about it, and we communicate, and we come to an agreement, and go, okay, well then this is how it should be. Okay, and then we do it, right? So it's like you go through something, and it's like the process. You just go through something, and if you make a mistake or do it wrong, and then we fix it, and then you learn better. So when you learn better, then you can do it again a little bit better the next time.
Yeah, you hope so.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's...
I mean, in essence, sure. Absolutely. You hope so. I don't have that faith for everybody, but...
Oh, yeah, I don't, but I'm just saying, like, if everyone had a little bit of their own responsibility, accountability for their own self and piece to this.
Yeah, you got to have a little humility too. So, and I think that that's something that we sorely lack in this day and age, for sure.
Yeah.
And because that doesn't help.
Do you think a lack of information or education could be a cause to that?
No, there's no lack of. So the lack of the only way that a lack of information happens now is if you happen to be in like an internet desert, which we know that there are those that exist here in New York. Like there's places that you can't get service. So that is in my personal opinion,
right?
That's the only way you're going to lack information or education is either one of two things: either you don't have internet and you can't afford a device, or you close your eyes. Because there's no lack of information. There's no lack of education. The library's free, right. And the library is still the best place to go. And I'm going to say this, and I say this. And this is not my original thing, but I do agree with it 110%. If libraries did not exist, they would never exist in this day and age because nobody would ever put that information in one place. No way. Not in this day and age. So be thankful that your public libraries exist because you know what? People actually do use them regardless of whether you think they do or not. And they're important because they are important. They're important civic places, man.
I agree. They are.
But they would not exist. Nobody would come up with that now.
No, I guess,
but I don't think that there's a lack of education. I think people, just like it doesn't matter if you have education or not, just because you have an experience doesn't make it fact that that's an actual like law or that's something. And just like you can have all the education and knowledge you want and still not be able to use it. And sometimes that's a choice. Sometimes there's an actual like legitimate reason why maybe you can learn all of these things, but you don't know.
You learn it, but you don't know how to use it.
Right.
Or put it into motion.
Right. And there's lots of reasons for that.
Sure. Yeah.
But I do not think that I don't think that we have a lack of education and a lack of information. A lack of information is definitely not at all. Like we could use a lack of information at this point for some stuff, in my personal opinion, because there's just way too much. Because that's the problem, and this is, I think, most of our problems now is if we go to look up one thing, okay, it's engineered, man. You're getting ads on your Facebook feed just from looking up one lousy thing, and it doesn't matter what it is, you're gonna get it, and it's just like all of this stuff is just made to come at us all the time. But it's so overwhelming and daunting to try to figure out what's accurate and what's not. Because there is accurate stuff out there, and there's factual stuff. And I'm sorry, you may argue about what's in a book, but just because you don't agree with it doesn't mean it's not right. If it's in a textbook, it's in a textbook for a reason. I'm sorry. You may not believe that, but you're entitled to your own whatever. So,
well, it depends on the textbook, I guess, but I know what you're saying.
Okay. Well, we can argue that, but I mean,
well,
you can't teach one.
If it's a children's book, I mean, what are you gonna?
Well, I mean, you're gonna argue facts, like you're gonna argue who won and lost wars based on what state you live in. sorry. Then but that's a thing, man. Like, you can argue that whatever you want. But
yeah, but people are going to argue. People do. People argue everything, no matter what.
Yeah, I know they do, and it's pointless. Because I don't really give a fuck. Like, your opinion's not going to change my opinion. My opinion's probably not going to change yours.
Right.
Unless I'm presented with something that actually, wow, that actually makes sense. That's better.
But if you were presented with it, would you be open to it?
I'm always open to everything. It may take me a while to integrate it, but I'm open to everything. But I'm not always. And I shouldn't say I'm open to everything. I'm open to hearing every idea. Doesn't mean it's an idea for me.
Okay, that's fair.
That's so, and that's reality.
Yeah,
That's I think that's a lot of people's realities.
Yeah.
Because when you said that, I'm like, you know what? No, I'm not open to everything. Because there are things I will say no to. There are things that I will just not do or take part in or whatever, just for whatever my reason is. So, right. So yes, and everybody's
that's fair.
And everybody should. You know what I mean?
That's totally fair. Totally fair.
But
I just had a thought too, and go ahead if you. Oh
no,
I thought you were going to say something. I just lost it.
That's the human factor, man.
Yeah. Well, again, and that you're right. That is the human factor. Is the human factor is we make mistakes, and even if I do know X, Y, and Z, I may get into a situation where I lose that logic. And I'm more in the emotional mind, as we talked about, a few episodes back. And again, you make the mistake, or maybe you say something wrong, or you look back on it and you go, well, maybe I should have said something. Something a little bit different. So using some insight and past experiences, you can kind of take some of that stuff together and mold a new way of doing it.
Yeah, and to kind of get into that, but you kind of brought up a perfect example of what you said earlier about advocating for yourself. This is the perfect reason why a lot of people can't advocate for themselves, because they can't keep those thoughts straight. It doesn't matter if they're written down. Like, there are people who really can't advocate for themselves. But people who
I get that.
can learn different patterns. And sure, if you can't remember everything you need to talk to the doctor about, write it down. And here's the thing. I'm going to tell you this. You get about 15 minutes. That's what you get with your primary care physician now. Okay? That's about what you get, 15 minutes. And they're on the clock, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah,
some of them will take longer. There are good ones out there, man, and I must say, like,
yeah, I'm not. We're not bashing medical professionals at all here.
No, not at all.
Having a conversation, and I think going back to what you just said, most people definitely have some kind of a device, whether it be a phone or something like that.
Put a note in your phone,
right,
man. Put a reminder to say,
yep,
hey, let me talk to him about this. You know
Correct.
What I mean?
Yeah, and that's, again, if it has to start small like that and you only remember one or two things, then start that way. Get the ball rolling I
like it.
So
even if you remember just to get up in the morning from your alarm clock, man, that's a good way to start.
That's a good way to start.
That's a good way to start above ground.
Oh, geez, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, as our last week's guest, Sylvester Jenkins III, said that we're all in this together.
We are. And on that note, being in this together, thank you very much to everyone out there. You supporting us and checking out our socials and sharing our stuff and checking out the podcast every week. We appreciate it. We appreciate all the listens. Oh, yeah, and don't forget, you can buy us a coffee at Above Ground Pod. That's right. So until next week, get well.
Be safe.
Stay
above. Thank you for giving us a listen. New episodes every Wednesday. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can share, rate, review, and even subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Other ways to support the show: follow us on social media, share the content, share our episodes. You can also buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/abovegroundpod. For further concerns, show ideas, or just to say hi, you can email us at abovegroundpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, thank you for listening and supporting mental health. Keep the conversation going and stay above.